Hello and welcome back to the Ain't Dead Yet podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our official sponsor, Sun Life Organics. Love, heal, and inspire. Sun Life Organics is a juice bar that has locations all across the United States, providing only the highest quality organic ingredients. I love it. Personally, I go just about every day. My favorite smoothie is the Holy Cow. It's packed with 50 grams of protein, and it always helps me recover. Go find one near you. Another official sponsor of today's podcast is Noble Origins. Noble is a grass-fed beef protein complex, utilizing everything in the cow from nose to tail. It's personally my favorite protein. I like the vanilla the best. I like to mix it with raw milk. That is my favorite combination, but the chocolate is also amazing. I also had mentioned with additional sponsor, Sun Life Organics, that they have a shake smoothie called the Holy Cow. They also utilize Noble protein in order to hit that 50 grams in that shake. So again, go order it. Check them out, nobleorigins.com. Use code ADY for 15% off. Love y'all. Hello and welcome back to the Ain't Dead Yet podcast. So glad to have you here today. This is going to be the final solo episode for a while. We're going to wrap up our three-part series. We did faith, fitness, and finance. This last episode of the solo series is going to be a Q&A. I kind of opened up the books for personal questions, any questions at all. And I kind of want to work through those today and talk to you guys about your questions and answer them as honestly and as openly as I possibly can. I can almost guarantee you I'll get off on some side tangents as we work through this. It's been a very interesting, call it 6 to 8 weeks in my life, in a very positive way. But I'm sure that because of those changes and those kind of updates in my life that some of these answers have shifted to your questions. So I'm going to dive right off into it, and I'm going to dive off into the questions that are pertaining to the first 3 solo episodes we did, the past 3 we've released. So the first question I'm going to answer, it's a fitness-related question. Someone asked, essentially what I take from their question is, what is your overall fitness goal? What does it look like? Like, what's next? And I get that question a lot, like, what's next? And I've spent a lot of time thinking about that over the last, really 3 months. As you guys know, we did a couple 100-milers December and February, back to back. And then we started getting into some high rock stuff. And then I broke a rib and cracked a shoulder blade and whatever, just running. And so I think I kind of took that as my sign to chill out on the running for a while. And I've kind of pushed back into the lifting scene. We still run here and there, but nothing crazy. So to answer that question, what I keep coming up with in my own head and my own thought process is this. I think to be an effective man, you should be 6 months out from any achievement, right? I think when I think about that, it's like, okay, I should be in good enough shape to 6 months from now do a full Ironman, to 6 months from now do a 100-mile or ultramarathon, to 6 months from now do a bodybuilding show, to 6 months from now climb Mount Everest. Like, it doesn't matter, right? That's kind of my goal, and that's where I want to get my body to, is where I'm that versatile and that well-rounded. And I think that's what a true hybrid is. I really think that it's probably closer to like 90 days out on most of those challenges. Once you get a great baseline, just to finish them, but to actually compete and do well, I think it's going to take about 6 months to really dive off into each of those. So that's my goal overall now from a fitness perspective, is to be 6 months out from anything in front of me. And I think that should be most men's goal. It just gives you a different perspective, a different kind of approach to your fitness. Whereas like when you're just training for one thing and doing one thing, you really lose focus on like the other like modalities, if you will. So like I ran for 3.5 years. I didn't focus on lifting. I lost a ton of muscle mass. I had no ass, no legs, and a lot of joint problems to work through once I started lifting again. So now I'm kind of trying to find balance in all that and be able to do anything at any time. So that's the first question that was fitness related. The next question, and this is nutrition related, which is fitness related, was what's your daily macros look like? Right now, to make this super simple, so I did 45 days strictly carnivore after the last 100-miler. So I did basically steak, eggs. I think I had chicken twice, and I had like cheese for 45 days. And through that process, I lost about 13 pounds. I think most of that was probably inflammation, because that is an outcome of the carnivore diet, believe it or not, is your inflammation goes down. And I leaned out a bit, and that was great. But then once I ramped the training back up, like there's no really good way to push really hard if you're strictly carnivore. Like you need carbohydrates. So I kind of started working with someone new. His name's Austin Clayton. He's in Roanoke, Virginia, one of my buddies. And he wrote me out a nutrition plan that I've been on now for about 10, 11 days. And those macros look like 3,300 to 3,500 calories a day, 300 grams of protein, essentially 260 to 280 grams of carbs, and around 120 grams of fat. And that's kind of what we're pushing right now. That's what we're eating. The body's still adjusting to having carbohydrates. I think the gut has to adjust. One of the things that carnivore does is it really like simplifies your digestion process. Once you start adding back in starches, gluten, shit like that, the gut starts to respond differently, which can, like, full transparency, like change the way you have bowel movements and what the consistency of that looks like. So I've been adjusting to that. I think everything's all good, but that's where we're at with macros and calories. The kids, this always is a question that pops up, and it happens when I go talk at the high schools, like, what do you bench press? I have no clue what my 1 rep max is. My goal in the next 30 days, though, is to incline press 315. That is my goal. That's what I want to hit. That number's been on my radar for at least a year. I didn't really pursue it that hard when I was doing a lot of ultra marathon training, but I'm coming after that pretty hard, and the goal is to hit that in the next 30 days. What that equates to on flat bench, 1 rep, I have no clue. I'm not a mathematician in that way, but maybe one day I'll do a 1 rep max on bench for all the kids out there and post it for you guys so you guys can finally have an answer. What gym do you go to? I have 2 gym memberships right now. The primary gym membership where I spend most of my time is at Collective. There's a South Austin location and a North Austin location. It just works well for me right now. There's co-working space. They have full-on recovery as far as like compression boots, sauna, plunge. It's right by like the epicenter of like the places that I spend in Austin. So like, South Congress, there's Sun Life Organics is right there. Shout out Sun Life, great sponsor of this show. I go to Two Hands a good bit, which is right there. And it's just a good area, good energy to be around. So I really like the Collective South location, and their gym is top notch. So I really enjoy that. And then like sparingly, I'll come work out at Squatch Fitness. Love this gym. It's been my home gym for over 2 years now. And it's also at the same location as the studio. So I like having that ability to kind of bounce back and forth when I need to based on what the schedule looks like and kind of if we're recording, if we're not recording. So those are my 2 gym memberships in the Austin area. I highly recommend both of them. I've heard a lot of good things also about Onnit. I know a lot of people or close friends that go work out there, and they have a lot of great things to say. And you can always do the LA Fitness thing or the Golds thing too. Like it's really what you're looking for and what you're trying to do. But at the end of the day, it's about moving weight. And so, regardless of where you choose or where you end up, I've seen really fit, strong people at every gym. I've seen really fit, strong people that have never worked out anywhere but their home. So it's really about the effort you put in. Now, I will say community is important, and it can impact you positively or negatively. So, that's just something to weigh when you're making those choices. Next fitness question. What are your body metrics? So I've just went and got a DEXA scan last week. I haven't had one of those in quite some time. And honestly, I didn't want to do one when I was running a lot because I didn't feel great about my body composition when I was running a lot. You're carrying so much cortisol when you're running 70 miles a week and you're trying to eat enough carbs to fuel that. I don't think your body shows up really well in that arena. At least mine didn't. And so I tried to stay away from the DEXA machine during that process, but I just went last week. Numbers were basically 6'1", 229 pounds, 15% flat body fat. I think it was 187 pounds of lean mass and 35 pounds of fat. And then there's obviously some bone mass in there, 7 to 8 pounds. I can't remember that exact number, but that's where the body's at. The goal, and this is super aggressive, in the next 90 days is to get my body fat percentage as close to 10% as possible. So in order to do that, I've got to take some pretty extreme measures when it comes to nutrition, workout regimen, sleep, routine. And so really all facets of my life are like supremely dialed in right now. Like I go to bed at the same time. I wake up at the same time. I eat the same thing at the same time. I have my coffee at the same time. I walk my dog at the same time. I go to the bathroom at the same time. Everything I do is timed out. And that can get a little bit tricky with the podcast, with the construction company, with the training regimen, with the travel. All of those things play in, but there's really no excuse at the end of the day. Like if you want something, you have to do all of those things. You got to make it work. And the way that I think of it is like I somehow figured out a way to run 70 miles a week for almost 3 years straight. So I'm pretty sure I can figure out how to manage my time appropriately. And not to dive off into a crazy like tangent here, but I will tell people this because I get this question a lot. It wasn't in this set or this series, but it was around time management. If you really struggle with time management, the best thing I can tell you to do is sign up for an Ironman and start training for it. Because you have no options, right? Like you have to go swim in the mornings at 5 a.m. Then you have to get ready and go to work, and you have to get on the bike at night, or you have to go for a run, or you have a brick session, and that's 6-7 days a week. So if you have really bad time management, just sign up for an Ironman, hire a coach, and start training for one of those. And you'll figure out that there's actually a ton of time in your day. You're just wasting a shitload of it scrolling or bullshitting with your friends in a group chat or talking about your dreams and goals instead of actually pursuing them, or reposting motivational quotes on Instagram and not living that way. Not throwing shade, but kind of am, because I'm really like, I'm tired of hearing all the bullshit behind it. Like wake up, follow a system, get your shit done, go to bed and do it all over again. That's kind of where my brain's been the last 6 to 8 weeks. And it's been phenomenal. And I'm finding in that I made a lot of excuses over the years. Like even with all the training and work and whatever else, like there was still plenty of times that I was just like flat out wasting time. And that also involves the people you surround yourself with and the people you spend time with and the people you invest in. Like some people are, they're a cup with no bottom. You could pour all day long and you're never gonna accumulate any volume, anything. And the quicker you can realize that and who those people are, the quicker you can stop pouring water into those cups. So for me personally, kind of getting that dialed in, pouring into the right places, and then by the grace of God and so much gratitude around this, like people pouring into me, by selecting my circle and being really careful with who's in that, my productivity, my success, my attitude, literally everything is improved. So be very cognizant of who you surround yourself with. Sorry for the tangent, but that kind of leads into this next question, and I think that's kind of why I went there. It asked about inner circle and how important my inner circle is. I would say it is everything. So over the years, my circle has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. And every now and then, someone will get added into that, right? And to get into that, people ask, like, what's it take to get into that inner circle? Over the years, it's become more and more difficult. And the beauty in creating your own circle is you can decide what the standard is. And people can judge it, they can knock it, they can talk shit on it. No one really cares at the end of the day because it's not their fucking circle, right? So for me, what it's elevated to and what it looks like now is I don't really care what you say. I want to see what you do. That's number one. Like so many people are so great. I mean, they're fantastic at pumping out a bunch of verbal bullshit on social media. And then you meet up with them in person, you spend time with them, and you're like, fuck, it lets you down. It happens all the time. And so for me, I stopped listening to what people say and just started watching what they do. A big trigger for me, or a thing that I watch for, is people will commit to things. It could be anything from a 5K to an Ironman to a 100-miler to a bodybuilding show to building a business to supporting their parents to taking care of their grandparents to whatever, right? It is so easy to commit to something and be motivated in the moment. I don't know how many times, like, and it still happens to me, I'll put on like Rocky and I'll watch Rocky and I'm like, fuck, I'm going to go be a professional boxer. And then the next day I'm like, well, I'm probably not going to be a professional boxer now. I think everyone kind of gets caught up in that. And So I watch for that in people. If you set a goal, I want to see you work through that goal. Even if you fail a million times, like I'll never quit on somebody who's giving effort. And I would expect the same in return. I don't want anyone to ever quit on me if I'm showing effort. But if someone commits to something and they show you over and over and over and over again that they're going to quit on it, you should think about whether or not they're worthy of being in your circle. Now, if that's how you behave and that's how you act, then it sounds like they're probably worthy of being in your circle. But I've tried over the last 5 years my absolute damnness to create a life where if I say I'm going to do something, I follow through with it. No matter how many times I fail, I keep showing up, and I expect that out of my circle now. That's really narrowed it down for me and kind of simplified the amount of people that are involved in my life. And again, I'll remind you, like, I'm not telling you to do it this way. I'm just saying this is what's working for me right now, and it's what I'm going to do for the time being. Other things as far as keeping someone in my circle. So I get this question, and it's tied in with faith. And it's a really interesting question, and I've went back and forth on it numerous times in my life. But someone will say, do they have to be a believer to be in your circle? That's a hard question. And the reason it's a hard question is because I've struggled with my faith throughout my journey numerous times. I've questioned what it means to me, what it is, what it means to the world, like I've struggled with it. And there are people that have kept me in their circle or supported me through those struggles to get where I'm at. And I think that that's kind of how I want to approach it. And that's kind of how I'm approaching it now. Like I'm not a Bible thumper. I can't quote much of the Bible. I have the 23rd Psalm tattooed on my arm. And that's only because my grandmother used to read it to me all the time. I know the Lord's Prayer because we used to pray it before every football game, right? And I'm slowly starting to learn the Bible piece by piece. So I'm not perfect either. And I think that that's the big thing for me to remind myself of is this, like, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to try. You have to be open-minded, which leads me to the next question or the next part of like this conversation around my circle is I require people to be open-minded to be a part of my inner circle. And I'm probably one of the most stubborn motherfuckers you'll ever meet in your life. Like I'm hard-headed. I get it from my mom. Shout out to you, Mom. I love you. But, that's where the stubbornness comes from. And with that, though, I will say this. My mom is more stubborn than I am. And over the last 20 years, I've watched her, like, be open-minded to different things that she can tell you, like, she would probably never consider that she now does or thinks about or applies to her life. And so it's definitely possible. I think to be completely closed-minded would be ignorant. But I think to be so open-minded that you don't have any beliefs or morals that you really stick to or that you challenge would also be ignorant, right? So I think there's a very moderate balance that needs to exist there. And I kind of look for that for people that come into my circle. Another piece of this. So my innermost circle is made up of males. I think that, outside of my mom, I don't really, I don't even consider her part of my inner circle, if you will. Like she's just there, right? She's not going anywhere. She can't get herself out. She can't get herself in. She's just there. She's locked in for life. And really, she's probably the only like human, if you will, that has that right. And she'll always be there regardless of what she does. I'll make sure I'm there for her. But outside of her, my inner circle is comprised of males. And for me, I don't mean that in like I don't know, I'm probably getting hammered for this in some way. Like, oh, you're sexist, women have value too. Like, I fucking know. I'm not saying that. Just for me as a man, I need other good men around me to be the best man I can be. And I'm not saying that women can't help me get there, but really good men surrounding me, I feel like get me there in a stronger way, if you will. So my innermost circle is comprised of men. Now, there are females in my life who are very important to me, who I listen to, who I call for advice. If I'm struggling with something that I need a different perspective or approach on, I will call. But those numbers are few and far between. There's probably 2 or 3 women outside of my mom that I would actually call and lean on in that way, because it also involves a lot of trust. And And that's another part of this circle. If you break that trust one time, it's done. I'm one of those people that believe it's very difficult to rebuild trust. I think it might be one of the hardest things to do. And I'm not even sure, and I've given people opportunities to do this. I'm not even sure, though, I've been able to fully let someone back in who's broken my trust. And when I say broken my trust, I don't mean like, they did something small. I mean like something large that was lied about for a long period of time that they made you feel like shit about or whatever. And then it would come out that they weren't telling the truth. Once you break trust to that level, like, you're dead to me. It's over. That door's shut. The door's getting erased off the board. Like, you're no longer in existence in my life. And I think that for me, that works. That doesn't mean I don't forgive them. It just means I don't forget. And I don't hold the resentment. I just say, hey, like, that's not part of my path anymore. This person's not involved with it. Like, I'm moving in a different direction. So trust is a big component of that. I don't care what they do for work or what they do for a living. I don't care if you work at Burger King. Like, someone that works at Burger King could be in my circle just as much as someone who owns an oil company or the fucking CEO of BP. I don't care. It's all about integrity. It's all about character, how they show up. I've had so many different conversations with people at different levels in their life, and some of the best conversations I've ever had in my life have been with homeless people because they're the fucking realest. And so for me, I don't base any type of involvement in my life on what position they hold in a professional realm. I base it off what position they hold in a personal realm. Like, how genuine are they? Are they honest? Do they try to help others? Are they involved with like that level of servanthood? Can they communicate well? Do they try to communicate well? Do they try to grow? Do they put effort? Those are the things that are most important to me, and can I trust them? And to be honest with you, I've met plenty of homeless people who I'd trust way before I trusted half of these people walking around this city. So that being said, that's an important thing to me. And I think that really wraps up my circle. So yeah, I don't have anything crazy in there, I don't think. But to me, that's what it takes. And like I said, that's all based through action and not words. Let's see. Next question in here. So I got a bunch of feedback on some opinions that I made during the Faith podcast around gay marriage, around like sin in general, and like honestly challenging questions that I really respect. And I wanted to say that on this episode. I don't disagree with anyone that any of those things like aren't a sin. Like, I'm aware that the Bible says that it is a sin, these different things. My point with all of that was there are sins that I do, and I believe that all sins are equal. Like, if I tell a lie, I'm basically an axe murderer, right? Like, I hate to be wild with it, but like, that's what the fuck I believe. So I don't view anyone else's sin as any different than mine, AKA I don't fucking judge their sin, because I don't want people judging mine. I know I'm not perfect. And I think that's the biggest problem we face when it comes to this whole faith conversation is there's people pushing all this shit about you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And it pushes a large portion of the community away from Christianity or really any type of faith when you pump it that way, because they have eyes. They're like, oh, like the pastor's having an affair with the choir director, but that's okay. Or like, whatever, they're getting divorced. That's okay. Like, I hate to be so blunt about it, but it's real shit. So my whole purpose or point behind that whole conversation was like, I believe all sins are equal. I know I'm a sinner. Therefore, with that information, I'm not going to judge you for your sin. So that is how I would address it. I know that's probably not perfect, and I'll probably get more questions on that, and that's fine. That's just where I stand on it. And I'm not afraid to move off of that spot. I pray about it. I've asked God about it. And what I keep hearing from God is, dude, as long as you keep sinning, you can't keep judging. So that's where I'm at with it. Today's episode is brought to you by our official sponsor, Sun Life Organics. Love, heal, and inspire. Sun Life Organics is a juice bar that has locations all across the United States, providing only the highest quality organic ingredients. I love it. Personally, I go just about every day. My favorite smoothie is the Holy Cow. It's packed with 50 grams of protein, and it always helps me recover. Go find one near you. Another official sponsor of today's podcast is Noble Origins. Noble is a grass-fed beef protein complex utilizing everything in the cow from nose to tail. It's personally my favorite protein. I like the vanilla the best. I like to mix it with raw milk. That is my favorite combination, but the chocolate is also amazing. I also had mentioned with additional sponsor, Sun Life Organics, that they have a shake smoothie called the Holy Cow. They also utilize Noble protein in order to hit that 50 grams in that shake. So again, go order it. Check them out, nobleorigins.com. Use code ADY for 15% off. Love y'all. This was a good question. So family related stuff. So there was an earlier episode, I guess this viewer had seen early on in the podcast, where I did a little bit of talk around family and family dynamics and kind of how I grew up. And this question was like who's in my life as far as family goes today? And it's a hard question to answer, honestly, because it's changed so much over the years. People have passed away, obviously. People have moved. People have burnt some bridges, if you will, that, and I'm not going to burn them publicly. I'm just going to not mention them when it comes to this. But I don't even think that they're bad people, genuinely. I think that there's just misalignment in life. And sometimes when that happens, like, you just keep moving full speed in your directions, both parties. And sometimes that distances you, and sometimes it brings you closer together. And sometimes people fucking rebound like Pong and they come right back across your path. You don't know. All you can do is like hold on to what you believe and run after that shit full speed. So with that, the people that I'm close with in my family, like my mom, I talk about her all the time. She's been my right hand for almost 35 years at this point. Like, the majority of what I believe, my work ethic, my drive, my passion, my fire, it comes from her. There's no question about that. I think she's the most powerful woman walking the face of this earth, and I would go to war with anyone, anywhere for that woman. So mom in my life. The next person I'll mention is my stepdad. I don't even know why I still call him that. It's really confusing, to be honest with you. So if you're out there and you have a dad and a stepdad and one was in your life more than the other, like, I hear you. I don't even know if I offend somebody when I say stepdad versus dad or dad. I don't think he cares. But for me, from the time I was basically 10 years old until now, he's been in my life. And he's been super consistent. He's the person that I know if I call right now or at 3 a.m. in the morning, he will answer the phone, no matter what. He will hang up on anyone. He will leave any room. He'll walk out of church. It does not matter. If I call, he'll answer. And because of that, there's a loyalty that's created. And he doesn't have to do that, right? He doesn't owe me anything when it comes to any of this. But he's always showed up in that way since I was a kid. And he's always, I feel like, given me his best effort to give me an idea of how to be a good man. And so for that, there's a deep respect there that can't be touched. It can't really be broken by anyone. And there's a ton of trust there. There's things that he knows about me that my mom doesn't know about me. There's things that he's protected me from earlier on that, like, people will never know about. And he's just that kind of person, and we have that kind of relationship. So he's an absolutely critical part of my life. So my mom, my stepdad, recently, since the podcast started, actually, and I want to shout out them next. This is exciting for me. So I didn't grow up with sisters. And without diving off into crazy family dynamics, I have a brother. Like, we consider each other brothers. We don't talk a ton. I know that there's mutual love there. If he called me and needed something, I'd show up, and I know it goes both ways. So there's no love lost. We just don't talk a lot. But on his side of the family, he's got he's got a set of stepsisters, or half-sisters, really half-sisters, and then he's got another half-sister. And what's been really cool since the podcast started is I've been able to connect with those three women, and they've become like sisters, like they kind of got my back from a female perspective, and that's been really cool to see develop, and I don't think that would have ever happened without this podcast. So supremely grateful for that. I love them to death. They know who they are. I hope they listen to this episode because they deserve their flowers. They've been awesome, and they've showed up for me tremendously over the last year. So I want to shout them out. Next is my grandmother. I can't, she'll never hear this. She'll never watch this. She'll never listen to it. She still thinks that I do, like I'm on CBS 60 Minutes or some shit every night. But for her, like when I was growing up, she taught me pretty much like all the basics as a kid. Like she taught me how to ride a bike. She taught me how to read. She taught me arithmetic, and I'm sure my math annoys the shit out of people because she literally like would not let me stop doing numbers. And I use it in my business today because of that. She taught me about God. She taught me how to throw a ball. She taught me how to catch a ball. She taught me how to trim trees. Like she taught me so much stuff. And she turns, so her birthday's December 10th. December 10th, she'll turn this year, so 1929. Whew, getting up there, grandmother. She's going to turn 96. And, but she's still as spry as ever. She's definitely got a little bit of spice to her, a little bit of spunk. People might refer to that differently that communicate with her, but I think that's what it is. And really it's energy. And so, I can only hope to live as long as she's lived and the type of life that she's lived, regardless of family dynamics. There's no one in our family that can say that she wasn't a massive part of their life. She showed up for everybody and gave her best her whole life. She kind of dedicated her life to her family. And, I think everyone loves her for that. I know that I certainly do. And, I get to talk to her probably once a week, sometimes twice a week. And those are always great conversations, but she's an important part of my life. And while we're on that note, like location wise, this ties into this. Like I don't have any family in Texas as far as like blood. I have people that I consider family, but they all live in Virginia. And so that kind of clears that up. On the dad side of the family. So I've talked about it a little bit, maybe on one of the earlier episodes. The person I was closest to on my dad's side of the family ever was my Aunt Cindy. I loved her to pieces. Like she was one of my favorite people on earth. And I'm going to talk about my other aunt in a second, Aunt Marcia, who's on my mom's side. And I love her to pieces too. Like she's one of my favorite people ever. So I think if you're out there and you're an aunt and you're an uncle, for me, like the realest thing I can say is like, I love them in a way that I don't think you can love a parent or even a sibling. Like it's a very special bond relationship. And so either way, with my Aunt Cindy, the reason that I say that she was so important to me, when I was a kid, we would travel around on holidays, like because of the divorce and different families and different grandparents and all this. The last stop though on Christmas was always at her house in Tennessee. And I'll never forget, like every single time I came into that house as a child, she shut it down. It didn't matter who had what going on. She's like, nope, Tripp's here. Like all attention went to me because she understood. She knew I'd been in two different states, 6 different cities or towns. Like I'd been pulled all over the place for 24 to 36 hours. And she knew she was the last stop. And so I would come in the door, she would embrace me, she'd take me off to the side, she'd feed me. She always made sure she saved the food that was my favorite for me. And honestly, she gave some of the best gifts ever. So I always remember that and what it meant to me. And then she was just one of those people you meet and you never question their intention. I think growing up in a little bit of a different type of childhood, you question a lot of people's intentions when you meet them. I don't think anyone who ever met her questioned her intention. Her intention was love through and through, just full of it, like completely full of love. We lost her a few years ago during COVID, and that was a tough one. She's got 2 daughters who are my cousins who are fantastic women. One lives in Alabama, the other still lives in Tennessee, and they're incredible people. They're an incredible family, and they were raised by an incredible woman. And then her husband, their dad, my Uncle Phil, is also an incredible man. But I will say this on my dad's side of the family, like the communication hasn't always been the best from my end. Like I got to take accountability for that. As an adult, I don't reach out as much as I should. I don't connect with them as much as I should, but there's a ton of love there. And I think probably some of that like space or division is because there was a large portion of time during my childhood, early adolescence, and even early adulthood where my dad wasn't around. He was locked up for a while. And when that happened, I wasn't visiting. And then he'd gotten out and I was in college and I wasn't visiting. So there's a big space there, a big gap. And I think because of that, like you just, you don't communicate as much as you would like. But I know a lot of that falls on my shoulders. And that's just me keeping it real. I want to talk about my other aunt, though, on my mom's side, Aunt Marcia. Also, another woman who you don't really question her intentions and how she shows up. She comes off as like, you're not going to mess with her, right? Like she's going to protect hers. She's not afraid to speak her mind. She's not afraid to kind of put people in their place if they need it. And I love that in an aunt. I love it. She's always been, I feel like, in the same way as my Aunt Cindy, like protective of me in a way. And I love her to death for it. And when I was a kid, I'd go down there in the summer sometimes and hang out and spend time. They live about an hour and some change south of Roanoke, where I'm from. And I would go down there and hang out and spend summers and watch baseball and Matlock and do that kind of thing. But she's been a pretty steady force in my life, and she's a really steady force in my mom's life. And they get to spend a lot of time together now that both of their professional careers have kind of shifted, even though my mom still works like a dog by choice. But they've gotten closer now. They get to do more things together. I love her to death. And then her husband, my Uncle Tommy, again, I don't understand how I got so blessed and fortunate with like the greatest sets of aunts and uncles ever. Uncle Tommy, like I loved him to death, man. He passed away. It's been a while now. Gosh, I don't even know how many years. That's horrible. It's been a while. But he was incredible. What I remember most about him is when I would go spend time down there in the summers, he had this big like couch recliner, and there was like 2 recliners. And I remember being a kid and like setting up in the recliner and, drink soda all day or whatever. And we're watching Matlock and we're laughing, and the Braves come on at night and we go eat at this seafood place. And we cut grass together. It was just like, it was almost like father-son time in a way. But he was my uncle, obviously. And I always really appreciated that. And I loved my time with him. And, so that's another important part of my family. And then they have 2 children, and 2 cousins, who also have families in their own lives down in that same area. And they're also great and fantastic people. So, again, I don't communicate with most of my family every single day or frequently. Like I talk to my mom pretty regularly. I talk to my stepdad pretty regularly. But outside of that, it's kind of sparingly. It's kind of hit or miss. Like it might be a month, it might be 6 months, it might be a year. And then I'll talk to my grandmother at least try once a week. Those are my family dynamics. I think that living 1,000 miles away definitely impacts them. But this is where my life's at. And I've talked to my mom a lot about that at length. When I got off the plane in sobriety in 2020, I knew right then, I was like, okay, my life's in Austin. Like everything that I'm going to do and build is in Austin. And I just felt it, and it's been that way ever since. And so has it created some strain on some relationships and particular things in my family? For sure. Like there's no denying that. But to be honest, I wouldn't change it. And that might sound selfish to some, but it is what it is. Next question. Do you travel a lot for work? Depends what you call work. So the construction consultation company we travel a bit for. If the money's right, we'll go just about anywhere. But we've tried to stay around the Austin area just because that's where home's at. It's hard for me to maintain all of my systems when I'm out of state. And when I say systems, I mean like I have a dog. His name is Tex. I love spending time with him. I don't like leaving him for long periods of time. My workout routine, the gym I go to, prepping my food, like all of those things are super streamlined when I'm home. And I find that when I travel, those things become more difficult. Time becomes less available. And there's some struggles that happen there with me. So I try to stay close if I can, but if the money's right, we'll go anywhere. Last year I traveled a ton back to Virginia, back to Roanoke, Virginia, hometown. I wouldn't call that work though. I'd call that purpose. ADY, this podcast platform, has created a lot of opportunity, and a lot of those opportunities reside in speaking and being able to spend time with kids in the public school systems. So I think last year, don't quote me on these numbers, but it was, I want to say between like 10 or 13,000 kids we got to speak to over the course of maybe 8 months, all around the Roanoke Valley, every high school, every middle school, Botetourt County. We got to talk to all the kids and tell them a little bit about the life story and try to share with them some things that I did along the way that if they could avoid, their life would probably turn out a little bit better. That's been the whole point and the whole purpose behind it. And we'll still pop back in from time to time. I was just up there a few weeks ago doing the same thing. But I traveled a good bit for that last year. I probably went home more last year than I did in the last 7 years. And that was great. You know, I got to spend time. I love the Roanoke Valley. It's beautiful. It's a totally different type of vibe. But I enjoyed my time there. I don't know how much time we'll spend there this year in comparison, but we'll see how it goes. Let's see here. Does the traveling impact your fear of flying? So this is a great question. I've talked a lot about my fear of flying on this podcast. I've struggled with it for years. I used to drink a lot to cope with it. I obviously don't drink anymore, so therefore kind of killed my coping mechanism for air travel. So the beauty in, I guess, having to travel a lot for purpose is I made peace with it. When I was traveling for pleasure or traveling for even the construction company, I was like, it doesn't, like, I could die, this plane could crash. Like, all those thoughts would start running through my head. But when it's for purpose, and I feel like my purpose is given by God, I genuinely feel like he's not going to kill me in a plane crash on the way to serve my purpose for him. So that gave me a lot of peace and enough peace to fly enough times where I'm not going to say I'm 100% comfortable with it, but I'm probably like 90 to 95%, which is much closer than I ever thought I could get. I'm not like sweating bullets. Like, I'm sweating worse right now sitting here chatting with y'all than I do in the airport or on the airplane now. And it used to be the other way around. And so I'm grateful for those opportunities to go back home to serve purpose because it helped me extinguish a large portion of my fear of flying. So yes, that's how that ties in, and it's gotten a lot better. It's a good question. Okay, this is a random one. Favorite cut of steak? Ribeye, hands down, no questions asked. Like, that is, if I'm going to pick a steak or I'm going to a butcher, I'm going to H-E-B or Central Market or whatever, I want a ribeye. I love a good cowboy ribeye, tomahawk ribeye. I like the fat. I think that animal fats are super awesome and they're super good for you, and you should eat more of them. I'll eat a strip, no problems there. I don't think I'm really a filet guy, if I'm being honest. Like, it just doesn't vibe well with me. I feel kind of awkward and clumsy cutting a little piece of steak like that. But if that's all they have, I'll eat it. But it's definitely not in my top three. I'd probably have a sirloin before I had a filet, to be honest with you. Don't know why. It's just how it is. All right. Next question. Relationship status. All right. Well, we got a little bit of an update here. I haven't spoken about this, been kind of quiet about it, and I'm not going to dive into a ton of detail because it's really unnecessary. The people who know or need to know, and they know the details of it, and that's all that matters to me. But I am currently not in a committed relationship with anyone or anything other than my faith, my purpose, Tex, which is my dog, but it's obviously like, you get it. And then, outside of that, like, there's nothing. I'm not saying that I'm shut off to opportunities or options. I'm just saying that that's my primary focus right now. And I'm going to keep that part of my life probably pretty private moving forward. Just because, like, I really don't think that part of my life needs to be anybody's business. I have no issue talking about the things that I experienced and learned in those experiences. and being vulnerable and open about them. But I'll never, call anyone out by name or say something that would track back to them, because I don't think that that's really how you move and groove in this world. Like I don't have time to throw shade or shit on anyone. And just like the people that I usually deal with, I would assume don't have time to do that either. So that being said, I am single, but please stay out of my DMs. I have no interest in entertaining them. Like if you DM me and I ignore you, it's not me being a jerk. It's just like, I don't care. Don't have time for it. And my focus is elsewhere. So I hope I addressed that appropriately. No clue. Like I said, I didn't prep anything for that question because I was just like, well, I'm going to go off the cuff and tell the truth. And that is what it is. Summer plans. So I'm going to travel as much as I can this summer. I want to go see things and do things. My 20s, I got to travel and experience a lot of different things, but it was usually riddled with partying and a lot of time invested in that and money invested in that. And I really want to go see and do things from this lens of sobriety. So I'd love to go to Europe this summer. That's on the list. I'll definitely be in Miami a couple times, which is going to be a totally different experience based on how I lived in Miami. So I'm excited for that. I'd love to pop out to West Texas. I'm going to take my first trip to California. I'm sure I'll go back to Virginia and Atlanta and places like that a couple times. I'm going up to New York in June for my buddy Brett's wedding. So we got a good amount of travel planned, and I'm going to enjoy that. I'm going to travel around and work out a bunch and stay locked in on my purpose and try to build as much business as physically and humanly possible over this summer. And that's where we're at. Next question was, I see you posting the day challenge back on your Instagram. What is it now? That's a great question. So if you follow me on my personal page, I've been known to do these like daily challenges, right? And I'll create a set of rules and I'll follow it for 100 days or 40 days or 20 days. This has kind of been the same experience for me. I'm doing a new one now, and it's basically, I started it 90 days out from my 35th birthday. I genuinely don't feel like I'm in my prime yet. I feel like I'm just cracking the surface. And I'm really excited to see what that looks like. My energy levels are through the roof. My confidence is back. I'm just ready to pursue shit with everything that I got. And so these next 90 days are really, it's like 70 some days now. That's what I'm doing. So there's fitness goals related with that. There's financial goals related with that. I really want to try to do like 6 months of revenue within the construction business in 90 days. So we're being super aggressive in that market. We've picked up a couple projects. We're being super aggressive in the fitness market, and we're about to be aggressive as shit in this podcast. We're going after guests that we want, right? We're no longer kind of playing it any other way. So we're going after guests we want that we think can bring an impact to those that listen and help the most people possible. And so everything over the next, these 70 some days or whatever we have remaining in this challenge is I'm just attacking life with everything that I got. And that goes back to the other question of like, I really don't have time to pursue much else. And I love that. So that's what the daily challenge is right now. There's obviously rules within that are, detailed out. And if you want to know what that is, like, okay, sure, go in my DMs and I'll send you the list. I'm not going to dive back through them in this. Just know that it's essentially me attacking everything in front of me. The question is, you seem different. You seem different recently. What's up? Again, without diving into a crazy amount of detail, here's what I'll say. When I first got sober in 2020, I've told this story, but I made a deal with God. I was like, I won't dive drugs, alcohol, or suicide, but I'm going to attack the absolute shit out of everything else, and he can take me when he's ready. Here's what I'll say. 2020 trip is back. He's back and he's in full swing. There's no more half shots. Like it is, you're going to get me, you're going to get all of me. And if that doesn't work for you, then, you can go ahead somewhere else. I tampered that down for a while. I'm not proud of it. Kind of lost myself in that, and that's all on me. I have to own that fully. And, but that shit's dead. 2020 trip is back. Like we're going after everything, and we're really trying to live every day like genuinely like it's your last, because it very well could be. And I don't want to take another day for granted. You know, when I turned 35, I thought about this the other day. It was sickening to me, but it's fucking halfway to 70, dude. I was like, holy shit, I remember when I turned 21, and I remember when I turned 25, and I remember when I turned 30, and like, the old timers will tell you, like, it just gets faster and faster and faster, and you don't believe that shit when you're younger, but I'm telling you, that is one of the realest things anyone's ever told me. Time just starts going quicker and quicker and quicker. So I'm just trying to embrace it and enjoy it the best that I can, and I'm really leaned back into finding my best self, recreating my prime, if you will, and seeing where that takes me. But yeah, I think that that's been the shift, a kind of a wake-up call, if you will. I more or less had a different types of circumstances that forced me to look in the mirror again and ask the questions that are hard of like, is this who you want to be? Is this the life you want to live? Is this the people you want to surround yourself with? Or do you want to do the opposite again and just let it all hang out? And I find that my life's much better when I just let it all hang out. And so that's what we're doing, and that's what we're going to continue to do. Great. Next question. Let's see here. Favorite pair of boots. This is interesting. I just got a new pair today. Shout out to Chisos Boots. It's an Austin company. But I got a pair of their boots on today. I'll try to get them in the shot. Sorry to the guys out there. It probably looks ridiculous. But these boots are awesome. I love them. I also wear double H's for work. It's a great boot. Big fan of those. For construction, they have a great composite toe. So I'll wear those regularly. But this is like my new favorite dress boot by far. I've had Lucchese's. I've had Tecovas, but this by far has been the best fit, especially for day one. Usually they hurt like hell, and these feel pretty good. So that's my favorite boot. Let's see here. Do I like jewelry? No. I mean, it's not really my thing. I wear a Garmin watch. That's good enough for me. It tracks the data that I need it to track. And I have a nice watch that I keep at home. I've literally never worn it, and I don't know if or when I will. I don't know. The flash doesn't really do much for me. I'm not saying I hate it though. Like, I think it's pretty cool when people can express themselves that way. It's just not my way of expressing myself. Next question that's in line with that. How many tattoos do you have? I have no fucking clue. And I'm not going to count. Like, I just know that I have both sleeves, my torso, my back, some stuff going on my leg, my ribs. And it's probably 16 years worth of work. And I will say this much though. There's two artists that I got to shout out. One is Ink Weaver over on 6th Street. He works at Blindside Tattoos on 6th Street. That guy tattooed me so many times earlier in my life when I was a little bit wilder, a little bit crazier. And he was actually one of the people that would be like, hey man, he would check me and be like, I don't think I should tattoo you tonight, and I think you should probably like get your shit together. So shout out to Ink Weaver, man. Good guy. He's still down there. But he did a large portion of my ink. And then I got to give a big shout out to my boy, Juan Lopez, Juan Tattoos on Instagram. He's down in New Braunfels. He's done a lot of my detail work. He did my logo on my back, which is probably my most important piece. He did my torso. He's done some of the animal theme stuff on my arm. But he's a fantastic artist and probably one of the best I've ever seen. So if you're looking for artwork in the Central Texas area, I can't shout out Juan Lopez enough. Again, I'll see if we can't drop his handle in the show notes, but Juan Tattoos on Instagram. But yeah, I have no clue how many. And the next question to follow up with that was, do you want more? I'll never say no to that. I never say never to really anything, but I want to do something kind of cool for the 100-miler stuff. I don't really know what that entails yet. I'm kind of letting Juan run with that. I don't know if I want to do that as far as like a full leg sleeve. Sorry, Mom. Or if I want to do something to finish out my back. But really the only things that I want that are left are kind of like a Greek god assembly of the different, like, philosophers and Stoics. And I don't know if I want that on my whole leg or my whole back. Whichever one I don't use, I'll do for the 100-miler to commemorate that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'll probably definitely get some more tattoos. And if I ever become ultra successful, which that's the plan, I'll probably get my hands done too. And yeah, Yeah, no rules there. Don't really care anymore. Let's see. What iPhone do you have? I don't even know. I still use the old charger, and I didn't even know there was a new charger until recently because I asked someone for a charger, and they asked which one I had, and I was like, I have a fucking iPhone. I didn't know there was a new one. But I have the older one. I like it. No clue what number it is. Completely random question. All right. Next thing, how much water do you drink a day? I try to go for a gallon. That's been the mark for a long time. Next question is, what does that say? I really can't even. Okay, well, we'll skip that one. Apologies there. Definitely going to skip that one. That one, oh, no, I'm not going to skip that one. It's a good question. It says, how many times have you been in love? Shoo. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think that if I base it off what I feel love is now, that number is different. If I base it off of what I thought it was at 18, that number is different. I would say, so I'm 34. I would say that I've been in 3 to 4 serious relationships from the time I was 18 to 34. So over the course of 16 years, I would say I've been in 3 to 4 serious relationships. There's been obviously some dating in between there. I had a college life that was fairly bonkers, if we're being transparent. So, yeah, I would say 3 or 4 times. I had a college girlfriend who at the time, like I felt was love. And it might have been, I have no clue, but there was a lot of closeness there. That's how I would describe it. There was a lot of trust there. There was a lot of time spent. And so that was my first version of love. I wouldn't date after college again until I was 28. So I went from 22 to 28. I dated, but I didn't enter anything serious. And that was definitely a new type of love for me. But that was definitely a long-term relationship, fairly serious one. And it went on. I was 27. I apologize. 22 to 27. And that went on until, I was about 29. And we lived together at one point. There was distance at one point. But that was definitely a challenging relationship. I learned a lot about myself. And I actually heard from her not long ago, and she's doing fantastic. Like, her life's great. She's happy. She's successful. Like, she's getting ready to move. And so it was just cool to hear from her. Completely random, but it's good to hear she was doing well. We didn't really split or part on bad terms. It was mutual. It was like, hey, I'm going this direction. You're going that direction. There's a lot of care here. I'll see you when I see you. And we didn't talk for so I would have been 29 when we broke up. We didn't talk for 5 years. And like I said, wish nothing but the best for her. The relationship after her I met, it was my first relationship in sobriety, which, I get now why they tell you to probably not date for a while once you get sober, because you're like, dude, just to be honest, like, I felt like I was reborn. And I don't mean that from like a faith perspective. That's obvious. Yes, I felt that way too. But it was like, I had to learn basic shit over again, because everything I'd ever dealt with in my entire life had been in the lens of like being able to party once or twice or 3 times a week. And when you're in that space or that mindset, the way you deal, feel, and cope with things is completely different. And so my first relationship in sobriety, super grateful for this person. Like, it was a tumultuous relationship. And I think, honestly, if both of us could go back, we would have decided day one to be platonic friends and just carried that for life. We related really well in business. She was brilliant in business. We didn't really relate a ton when it came to like drive for certain things. I would say I was definitely more obsessive. She had more balance in that type of world, but we were close around health. I was just getting sober. She had just been diagnosed with a life-altering diagnosis. And we bonded over that. We kind of helped each other out, and we learned a lot from each other. And again, that was another relationship that was like, we essentially lived together, and then it was long distance. And then we lived together again, and it was long distance again. And so it was pretty trying. It was definitely challenging. But again, there was a lot of love there. Looking back on it now, I have no regrets. I learned a tremendous amount about myself. And then there was the last one, the most recent, definitely a form of love, a different type of love. It was pretty much all long distance. I learned, again, a lot about myself and like how I need to be better and how I need to show up and what I want in a partner and what these standards are that I just talked about earlier in the episode, and upholding those and making sure that I pay attention to myself and if I'm upholding those. And, it was definitely an interesting dynamic being this age, being long distance, and dating another person who is a pretty successful professional in their own regard as far as what they're building and what they have going on. There's a ton of respect there for what they're doing. And I think trying to figure out how for two people who are ultra driven like that to maintain balance and connection without being too connected and without being too disconnected can be challenging. But there's no regrets there. Like I said, there was a lot learned, and it is what it is. And so I would say all of those were a form of love. And maybe one day I'll do an episode where I deep dive relationships, but I'm probably going to wait till I have like a Mel Robbins on the show or some shit like that. Because I think it would be a great conversation, and I would love to let her pick my brain. And so shout out Mel Robbins. I'm definitely going to clip this shit out of the episode. Hopefully you hear this, and I would love to have you on if you get the opportunity, because your Let Them book did a lot for me during a time where I was having a hard time. Your book did a lot for me. And if you're out there and you're struggling with literally anything, I highly recommend her book, Let Them. It's definitely deeper than just those words. It's essentially let them, so therefore I can let me. But yeah, shout out to Mel Robbins. Got to get her on the show and have a deep dive on relationship stuff. That'd be fantastic. And that really wraps all the questions we have for this episode. So I didn't know how long this was going to take. Looks like we're probably a little bit under an hour. And that's totally fine. But I wanted to make sure I addressed everything that I was hit with based on the last 3 solo episodes before we get back into having guests on the show. The ultimate goal of this podcast, again, has always been to try to help people. I just wanted to do a series where it was like, this is me, this is who I am, this is me off the cuff for the most part. Like I don't have notes. I had the questions in my phone, but like I don't have notes. I try not to ever have notes. I don't have a set list. When I have guests on the show, I just want to keep it as raw and real and vulnerable as possible. And so but the goal has always been to like have the best possible guests on the show that can help the most people. And that's what we're leaned into. And especially over the course of this next 70 whatever days, like it's all in. So I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate the support. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Shout out to our sponsors, Sun Life Organics and Noble Origins Protein. Both of those things are off the chain. They are the best of the best when it comes to their market. And if you need a code for that, use code ADY for Noble Origins. Get you a good 15% off. I can't get you a code for Sun Life though. But I heard if you go in there and you're really nice and you go there a lot, they'll cut you some slack from time to time. That being said, I appreciate the opportunity to come in here today and spit this final solo out, and I look forward to the guest lineup. And I think you guys are going to be really excited about who we're bringing on the show. All the love, be good. And that's going to wrap it for today's episode of the Ain't Dead Yet podcast. Thanks.